Does your gear matter in wildlife photography? Does having the best camera and the best lenses automatically translate to getting the best images in wildlife photography? Let's find out. Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome, and please do hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that bell icon so that you're always updated whenever I post new content. If you haven't already checked out my previous video on my 10 wildlife photography tips, I'll put a link up here or in the description below, so do check that out. And so on with today's video. So does the quality of your gear matter in wildlife photography? So first, let's understand what sets entry-level camera gear apart from top-end camera gear. So for the sake of comparison, I'm comparing two cameras at opposite ends of the spectrum. Both cameras that I've used in my wildlife photography. One being the Nikon D3200, which was the absolute basic model, and the D5, which is the top end, the best that there is in the business in Nikon. Let's look at what are the factors that matter in a camera for wildlife photography. So the first thing that we're looking at is the number of autofocus points. So the D3200 has a grand total of 11 focus points. The D5 has 153. ISO performance, because shooting in low light with wildlife, you're always shooting either early hours, mostly shooting early hours of the morning and late in the evening. So ISO performance in low light is very important. With the D3200, you could push to probably a max of ISO 3200. But with the D5, it can go up to a staggering 102,400. Then the next comes frames per second. That is, how many shots do you get with one squeeze of the trigger. With the D3200, it was a very meager 4 frames per second. With the D5, it's literally thrice that at 12 frames per second. Then the next that you've got to look at, again, is a buffer, because if you're shooting a lot with in burst mode, then the buffer matters. That's how many shots you're able to shoot before the camera starts slowing down and you have shutter lag. So with the D3200, it has a buffer of about 8 to 10, whereas the D5 has a staggering 200 shot buffer. Image resolution, the D3200 has 24 megapixels. The D5 has only 21 megapixels. So that's the camera. Now let's look at the lenses. So with the lens, the first thing that you're looking at with wildlife, you're looking at obviously a longer reach. So in the minimum you're talking about is a 200 mm on a crop sensor body, so that you get about 300 mm. So we're looking at anywhere from 200 mm to 600 mm. Yeah, there's even an 800 mm. So focal length, because you obviously want to get closer to your subject. It's wildlife, it's not going to sit in one place waiting for you. Then it's flexibility versus the degree of control that you have in your aperture, which is your zoom lenses versus a prime lens. So do you go for a zoom because you're able to control how much you're able to keep of the subject in the shot, depending upon whether it's moving towards you, how large it is in the frame, etc., or the aperture, so that you can control your depth of field. So if you look at some zoom lenses, they don't have a fixed aperture value. They go from f5 to f6.3, like the Sigma 1 5600. But there are some like the Nikon 200 500 mm, and that's a fixed f5.6 lens. So there's that side of it. Then if you look at low light performance, again, because it's not good enough to have just a camera which is excellent in low light, your lens is what's capturing the light. So having a fast lens, like an f2.8 lens, versus having an f4 versus having an f5.6, or again, like we spoke about, the zoom lens, which goes up to f6.3, f8. So low light performance is something that would be affected. Sharpness of the lens, obviously, because you're looking at good quality images. So at the end of the day, you want to have a sharp image. And then the cost. Again, we're looking at, if you're looking at a zoom lens from a third party like a Sigma or a Tamron, that's at a completely different price range than you would if you're looking at, say, maybe a 500 or a 600 mm for from Nikon or Canon, a prime lens at the other end of the spectrum. Again, completely different at both ends of the spectrum. Let's look at some of the images and see if we can easily determine which image has been captured by the entry-level gear compared with which one was shot with the top-end gear. All of these images that I'm showing you right now, these are images taken at the same location, shot 5 years apart. That's the most realistic comparison I could give you. And like I said, so one was shot 5 years ago on a D3200 with a Sigma 150-500 f5 to f6.3. And what I've shot most recently was with my Nikon D5 and my 500mm f4 EDVR. So this is an image of a river turn. So sitting on a rock, beautiful background, lovely light. The image is sharp, the background is blurred out. Now if you look at the next image, it's again the same species, a similar rock. The light is falling perfectly on the bird. So when you look at these two images, can you tell? Now you can see what gear I used to shoot this bird and what gear I used to shoot this bird, and this was 5 years apart. So that's also technology that's 5 years apart. Is it so evident? Here's another example. So that was a portrait. Now I wanted to show you a fast action freeze 5 years apart. So this is a spot-billed pelican. This is just after it's picked up a twig from the water and it's taken off. Is it that easy to tell that this was shot with entry-level gear versus with top-end gear? Looking at the image, would you be able to choose? This was shot with my D5 and 500mm f4. And this image was shot with a Nikon D3200 entry-level 4 frames per second camera with a Sigma 150-500mm lens. How close is it in terms of image quality to the other image? So let's look at one more example. So this is now in a low light scenario. In one shot, we've got a slow shutter pan of a spot-billed pelican in flight. And in comparison, I've got a cormorant drinking water on the fly. Again, if you look at both images, can you tell which was shot on a D3200 and which one was shot on a D5? Which one was shot with a 150-500mm Sigma and which one was shot with a Nikon 500mm f4? Some of you might guess right on all of them. Some might guess right on some of them. But for the most part, people would struggle to pick which was which. Definitely not in all three cases. So that is the point. At the end of the day, what matters is your skill, your knowledge, applying the right techniques, and knowing how to squeeze the most out of your gear. And that's irrespective of whether it's entry-level, intermediate, or top-end gear. So to give you an analogy, imagine writing a novel using a typewriter versus using a computer with spell check, word count. You can look for synonyms, it will correct your grammar, etc. But writing a novel is about a creative process. It's about creative thinking, so not technology. So would the technology help? Sure it would. It would make things easier. It would make things faster. But that has nothing to do with the creative writing process. Photography is very similar to that. So technology doesn't ever compensate for skill. It doesn't ever compensate for your knowledge or perseverance. It only serves to complement the skills and expertise of the photographer using the gear. So if you have entry-level gear or intermediate gear, get the most out of it by learning to work around its limitations. So if you have a camera that shoots only, say, 4 to 5 frames per second with a very shallow buffer, then learn to shoot in controlled bursts. Don't just spray and pray. There's a lot of wildlife photographers who would look through the viewfinder to shoot, and then whenever they want to change a setting, they pull back, look at their screen, make the adjustments, and then put it back. Those are precious seconds lost. So learn where what button is. Learn to make your changes while still looking through your viewfinder, through the eyepiece, so that you never lose track of your subjects. In wildlife photography, you cannot control what the animal is doing. So you have to be ready to take the shot at any time. Learn better field craft. If you're talking about the fact that you have a smaller lens and you're not going to be able to get the subject to fill the frame, that's when you need better field craft. Make the most out of your gear, but learn better fieldcraft. Learn how to read the animal, how to read the bird. Know when it's comfortable so that you can move closer, Because it's not about just taking a shot and then cropping. If you're going to do that, then you're not improving your skills as a wildlife photographer, which is what this is about. So all of these things make a huge difference despite the limitations of your gear. Learning the right settings is very important. If you're going to try to get a panning image in low light, you need to know what settings you have to capture a panning image. So at the end of the day, your camera only does what you tell it to. So the outcome is completely dependent on you. So my personal rule when I began photography, and I started with the D3200 and the Sigma 150-500, was that I'm not going to upgrade to the next level of camera or lens until the day that my skill level exceeds what my camera is capable of. If you have that rule, you're going to spend time to ensure you get the most out of your camera. You're going to get the most out of your lens. You're going to improve your fieldcraft. If you're just going to say, oh, this is a new model on the market, I've got to go buy that, you're constantly letting technology dictate terms to you. And how have you improved as a photographer to match that? So this is my personal rule. Somebody might say, look, I've got the money for it and I'm going to buy it. That's a different school of thought. But this is how I developed as a photographer. Let's understand something else. So somebody is always going to say, oh, then why do professional photographers always say, oh, the gear doesn't matter, it's about, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Let me put it this way. If you take tennis, if you take Roger Federer, and you put an old racket from 1990 in his hand and sneakers and put him on a tennis court to play, is he going to win? Most likely. Is he going to struggle? Yes. So you will never find any top professional in any sport, in any walk of life, who says, yeah, I'm the best there is, but I'm not going to use gear that matches my skill level. You will always want gear that matches your skill level. But it's not the gear that makes them skillful. So always remember that. And it doesn't automatically mean that if you give a club level player the best of gear, that automatically their skill level is going to go up. So keep that in mind. The best photographers out there use the best gear because their skill level has reached that point where they need every ounce of technological advantage to help them make those images. But don't lose the lesson along the way of improving your own skill. I'd like to quote Peter Adams, who said, a camera didn't make a great picture any more than a typewriter wrote a novel. So thank you for watching. I hope you appreciated the video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button if you like the video. If you have any questions or comments, please do post them in the comment section. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Take care and good light.